Dear children, today we are going to read a new chapter, that is chapter number 5 of your history. The name of the chapter is Rulers and Buildings. Here basically boys, we are going to learn which rulers or which king built which buildings. This chapter is quite separate to compare with the chapter number 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is the chapter. Figure 1 shows the first balcony of the Qutub Minar. Here was the first figure. It shows the first balcony of the Qutub Minar. See, a balcony means the highest tier. Boys, you have seen many buildings have balconies, okay, and then in cinema hall or theater hall we have the highest tier of seats, that is called balcony, okay. So here it shows the first balcony of Qutub Minar, and you must remember Qutbuddin Aibak had this constructed around 1199. Qutbuddin Aibak, he constructed this Qutub Minar in around 1199. But you must remember here Qutbuddin Aibak, he was the founder of slave dynasty, okay. Notice the pattern created under the balcony by the small arcs and geometrical designs. You have a look very carefully the pattern, how it created, okay, under the balcony by the small arcs and geometrical designs. Can you find two bands of inscriptions under the balcony? Boys, can you find here the two band flat thin strips, okay, of inscriptions under the balcony? These are in Arabic, okay. These inscriptions are in Arabic language, boys. Notice that the surface of the minar is curved and angular. You notice this? The surface of the minar, it is in the cup shaped and angular. Placing an inscription on such a surface required great precision. So, to place an inscriptions means a thing inscribed, okay, as on a monument. So on such a surface it required great precision. Precision means it required great quality or condition. Only the most skilled craftsperson could perform this task. See, only expert, we have to say, okay, well-known person, okay, who is, that means most skilled person in crafts, okay, so that person could perform this task. Craftsperson, you know, was person who makes objects by hand. So that craftsperson also should be skilled one, okay, well trained person, otherwise it will not possible. Remember that very few buildings were made of stone or brick 800 years ago. Boys, you must remember, among all the buildings, only a few buildings were made of stone or brick, which were 800 years ago. What would have been the impact of a building like the Qutub Minar on observers in the 13th century? So it asks what would have been the impact. Impact means marked effect, okay, of a building like the Qutub Minar on observers. Observers means person who watches that, okay, in the 13th century. Between the 8th and the 18th centuries, kings and their officers built two kinds of structures. So, boys, in between 8th and 18th centuries, all kings and their officers they used to build two kinds of structures. Okay, two kinds of several parts like that. The first were forts, palaces, and tombs, self protected and grandiose places of rest in this world and the next. The second were structures meant for public activity, including temples, mosques, tanks, wells, caravan, then shirais and bazaars. So, boys, here what we find in between 8th and 18th centuries, kings and their officers they built two kinds of structures, two kinds of buildings like that. And among them, the first were forts, palaces, tombs, self-protected and grandiose. Grandiose means impressive and imposing in appearance or style. Okay, fort, a fortified building is known as forts. Palaces means was where king used to live. Then different monuments. Okay, tombs means a monument to the memory of a person. Then self-protected and grandiose places of rest in this world. And the next one is the second where the structures meant for public activity. So the structures which are meant for work of public, including temples, mosques, tanks, wells, caravans, sirais, and bazaars. Kings were expected to care for their subjects. Kings were expected in order to care for their subjects, for their means own people, and by making structures for their use and comfort. And by the way, by making structures, it is for the uses of his subjects or king's subjects, their use and comforts, and to make their life comfortable. Rulers hope to win their prize in this way by building like this, okay, by constructing. Rulers they suppose what to win the express of warm approval from one's own subjects. Construction activity was also carried out by others, including merchants. Construction work, boys, it was also carried out by others also. Among them, merchants also included. Okay, merchants means say a big business person, okay, businessman like that. They built temples, mosques, and wells. They used to build these temples, mosques, and wells. However, domestic architecture, large mansions, which is known as Haveli in Hindi or Urdu, or merchants, has survived only from the 18th century. See, however, architecture means the art of practice, the art or practice of designing. Then large mansion means a large block of flats, which is known as havelis or merchants, has survived only from the 18th century. These merchants were survived only from the 18th century. Engineering skills and construction. Monuments provide an insight into the technologies used for construction. Boys, monuments means here statues, buildings, or other structures, okay, erected to commemorate or and a notable person, okay. So provide an insight. Insight means a deep understanding into the technologies used for construction. Take something like a roof, for example. As example, you take this. So we can make this by placing wooden beams or a slab of stone across four walls. So we can make this just by keeping wooden beams or a slab of stone across four walls. But the task becomes difficult if we want to make a large room with an elaborate superstructure. See, but the task it becomes difficult when we want to make a large room with an elaborate means develop or present further detail, okay, means to make it a very large one or superstructure. This requires more sophisticated skills here. More sophisticated. Sophisticated means developed to a high degree, okay. Good skilled person is required here. Between the 7th and 10th centuries, architects started adding more rooms, doors, and windows to buildings. So, in between 7th and 10th centuries, architects they began to add more rooms, doors, and windows to buildings. Roofs, doors, and windows were still made by placing a horizontal beam across two vertical columns, a style of architecture called trivet, okay, or corbelled. Here, in between the 7th and 10th centuries, architects they began adding more rooms, doors, and windows to different buildings, in which roofs, doors, and windows were still made by placing a horizontal beam across two vertical columns, okay. A style of architecture called trivet or corbelled. So it is a style of architecture, okay. This trivet and corbelled. Corbelled means of a structure supported on corbels, and trivet means it is not accurate like that, okay. Then between the 8th and 13th centuries, the trivet style, okay, style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, tombs, and in buildings attached to large step wells, that is baulis. So in between 8th and 13th centuries, the trivet style means that straight style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, tombs, and buildings. So it was used in different religious places, such as in temples, mosques, or that means in the tombs, okay, in the monuments, and in buildings which is attached to large step wells. This stepped wells, or which is known as bowl, is also it is common in arid areas of Indian subcontinent. Boys. Temple construction in the early 11th century. Now let us see, boys. Temple which was constructed in the early 11th century. The Kandriya Mahadeva temple dedicated to Shiva was constructed in 999 by King Gangadeva of the Chandela dynasty. See, boys, this Mahadeva temple, which is known as the Kandriya Mahadeva temple, okay, it is there in Madhya Pradesh, and this temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva, which was built in 999 by Gangadeva of the Chandela dynasty. Gangadeva, he was the ruler of this Chandela dynasty. He was constructed this building or this temple was. Figure 3b is the plan of the temple. Have a look on the left margin of this page. It has given figure 3b. It is the plan of the temple, means before say constructing any temple or building, a plan used to make, boys. So here is the plan of that temple. An ornamented gateway led to an entrance and the main hall Mahamandapa where dances were performed. So an ornamented means, boys, make look more attractive by adding decorative items. Gateway led to an entrance, okay, gateway through which people used to enter there in the temple, and the main hall, okay, the main hall of the building, boys, which is known as Mahamandapa, where dances were performed. Dances were used to perform there in the Mahamandapa. The image of the chief deity was kept in the main shrine, which is known as Garbhagriha. So, boys, the image here, idols or image of the chief deity. Deity means a god or goddess. It was kept in the main shrine. Shrine means that holy place, which is known as Garbhagriha. This was the place for a ritual worship where only the king, his immediate family, and priests gathered. So, boys, this Garbhagriha, it was the place for a ritual. Ritual means a religious ceremony, ritual worship, okay, a religious worship where only the king and his closest family members and priests gathered. Okay, public cannot gather there, it was not allowed. The Khajuraho Complex contained royal temples where commoners were not allowed entry. See, Khajuraho temple, it is a temple, okay, which contained royal temples where commoners were not allowed entry. These royal temples means having the status of a king or queen, boys, and there in that Khajuraho complex, ordinary or common people were not allowed to go inside. The temples were decorated with elaborately carved sculptures, and the temple of this Khajuraho complex, it was decorated with elaborately carved sculptures. Elaborately means in a detailed, carefully arranged manner, okay, in a carved sculptures. Then see figure 4. The Rajeshwara temple at Tanjavur had the tallest shikhara amongst temples of its time. So Rajeshwara temple, which is there at Tanjavur, it had the tallest shikhara. Tallest shikhara means a spire, okay, on a Hindu temple amongst all the temples of its time. Constructing it was not easy because there were no cranes in those days, and the 90-ton stone for the top of the shikhara was too heavy to lift manually. So, to construct, it was not easy during those days because there were no cranes. Cranes means, boys, a large tall machine which is used for moving heavy objects. At present days, we can see these heavy objects, okay, it used to lift or carry by cranes, okay, at high level or from building up to the bottom on the floor. In those days, it was not easy. It is because of there were no cranes, and the 90-ton stone for the top of the shikhara was too heavy to lift manually. So, by using manpower, okay, to carry 90-ton stones for the top of the shikhara, it was too heavy, okay. So, the architects built an inclined path to the top of the temple, placed the boulder on rollers, and rolled it all the way to the top. So, as there were no cranes, boys, to lift, it means heavy things here. So, the architects, what they used to do, and that heavy things, it was not possible to carry by human being, okay. So, the architect built an inclined path to the top of the temple. Architect means person who designs buildings, okay, and then incline means turning away from the vertical or horizontal or sloping, okay. That way they built path, okay, rod in to the top of the temple and placed the boulder on rollers and rolled it all the way to the top, okay, with the help of that means by the process, okay, they used to place, the architects place the boulders on rollers, and by rolling it was used to carry it up to the top. The path started more than 4 kilometers away so that it would not be too steep. The path it started more than 4 kilometers away, okay, so that it would not be too steep. If it is too steep, so to carry such heavy things, it is not possible. That's why the step was not too, that means so steep, okay, dear. This was dismantled after the temple was constructed. So dismantle means take to pieces as in when the temple was finished to construct. But the residents of the area remembered the experience of the construction of the temple for a long time. But those who were residing there of that area, they remembered, they are experienced how that means the building was constructed or how that temple was constructed. They remembered it for a long time. Even now, a village near the temple is called Charupallam, the village of the incline. Even that means now there is a village near that very temple. Okay, temple of Tanjavur here, boys. So, the name of that village is called Charupallam. Okay, it is the village of the sloping area. Okay, it is yet there. Two technological and stylistic developments are noticeable from the 12th century. There, to technological means relating to technology, okay, and stylistic developments were observed from the 12th century. See what were those? That 2 points. Let us see. The weight of the superstructure above the doors and windows was sometimes carried by ox. Okay, the weight of the superstructure. Superstructure means a structure built on top of something else. So above the doors and windows was sometimes carried by ox. If you look, that means that structure it is given figure 5a. So the architectural form was called arcuate. Architectural means relating to the art or practice of designing and constructing building. Okay. Then form was called arcuate. Arcuate means curved. Compare figures 2a and 2b with 5a and 5b. Okay, what is the difference between, you find in between 2a and 2b with 5a and 5b. The second point, limestone cement was increasingly used in construction. So in order to build a temple, okay, limestone cement, it was increasingly used in the construction. This was very high quality cement, which when mixed with stone chips hardened into concrete. Okay, so you see, boys, this was very good quality cement, and when it mixed with stone chips, it hardened into concrete. It becomes like a stone, okay, in physical form. This made construction of large structures easier and faster. So, with the help of stone and cement, it made construction of large structures quite easier and faster. Take a look at the construction site in figure 6. Here in figure 6, boys, you can see the construction work is going on. So have a look this construction site. Building temples, mosques and tanks. Temples and mosques were beautifully constructed because they were places of worship. See, temples and mosques. Temples means where Hindus used to go for prayer, okay? and mosque is the place where Muslim community used to go for prayer. Okay, they were beautifully constructed. It is because they were places of worship. Yes, they were places of worship. That's why these temples and mosques were beautifully constructed. They were also meant to demonstrate the power, wealth, and devotion of the patron. Okay, they were also meant here, meaning okay, significant of this. It indicates what? It demonstrate. Demonstrate means give a practical exhibition and explanation. Okay, what does it give? Practical exhibition and explanation. It gives about the power, wealth, and devotion of the patron. Patron means a person who supports with money. Okay, and devotion means love or loyalty. Okay, take the example of the Rajeshwara temple. An inscription mentions that it was built by King Rajadeva for the worship of his god Rajeshwaram. Here, an inscription means a thing which is inscribed, which is mentions that it was built by King Rajadeva for the worship of his god, in order to worship his god. Okay, Rajeshwaram. Notice how the name of the ruler and the god are very similar. Boys, notice that means the name of the ruler who was ruling there and the god how are very similar. Okay, Raja Rajeshwaram and name of the king is Raja Rajadeva. Okay, talks see the ruler and the god are very similar. The name of their that means the name of the god and the name of the ruler is very similar. Means here the king took the god's name because it was auspicious and he wanted to appear like a god. See, the king used to take the king the king used to take the god's name. It is because of it was auspicious. Auspicious means favorable, and he wanted to appear like a god. Okay, so the king also wanted to appear in front of the people like a god. Through the rituals of worship in the temple, one god, Rajadeva, honored another, Rajeshwaram. So, with the help of religious worship in the temple, one god, Rajadeva, and honored another, Rajeshwaram. The largest temples were all constructed by kings. Largest temples, okay, they were all constructed by kings. The ruler who was ruling there, he built it. The other lesser deities in the temple were gods and goddesses of the allies and subordinates of the ruler. So the other lesser deities, okay, lesser deities means a god smaller than other. In the temple, they were gods and goddesses of the allies. Allies means to unite, okay, and subordinates. Subordinates means a person under the authority or control of another within an organization of the ruler. The temple was miniature model of the world ruled by the king and his allies. So the temple which was built there, okay, it was a miniature model of the world ruled by the king and his allies. As they worshipped, miniature means voice, very small of its kinds, okay? So, as they worshipped their deities together in the royal temples, it seemed as if they brought the just rule of the gods on earth. As they used to worship in the temple boys their to their god or goddesses together in the royal temples, there it looks as if they brought the just rule of the gods on earth. Muslim sultans and Pashas did not claim to be incarnations of God, but Persian court chronicles describe the Sultan as the shadow of God. You see, Muslim sultans and Pashas, they did not claim to be incarnation. Incarnation is most important. So here, spirit, okay, or quality like that, having special spirit like that of God. But Persian court chronicles, they describe the Sultan as the shadow of God. They describe their Sultan as shadow of God. An inscription in Delhi mosques explain that God chose Aladdin as a king because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon, the great law givers of the past. So here, boys, an inscription. Inscriptions means a thing inscribed as on a monument or book. So in Delhi mosques, it explained that God chose Aladdin as a king. It is because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon. Okay, so Moses was most important prophet in Judaism. Okay, and Solomon, uh, here he was also a great person. Okay, personality wise king. Okay, of the United Kingdom. The great lawgivers of the past. They were the great lawgivers of the past. This Moses and Solomon. The greatest lawgiver and architect was God Himself. So, among all greatest lawgiver and architect means who designs building like that, okay, was God Himself. He created the world out of chaos, and God and goddesses created the world out of chaos. Chaos means complete, okay, disorder or confusion, which is out of confusion or complete disorder, and introduced order and symmetry. And introduced what? Order and symmetry. Symmetry here, it means the quality of being made up of exactly similar parts facing each other or around an axis. Okay. As each new dynasty came to power, kings wanted to emphasize their moral right to be rulers. Here, as new dynasty existed to power, kings he wanted to emphasize. Emphasize means give special importance their moral means their principle right to be rulers. Constructing places of worship provided rulers with the chance to proclaim their close relationship with God, especially important in an age of rapid political change. Here, constructing places of worship. It gives what rulers with the chance, with the opportunity to proclaim. Proclaim means announce officially or publicly their close relationship with God, especially important in an age of rapid political change. Rulers also offered patronage to the learned and pious and tried to transform their capitals and cities into great cultural centers that brought fame to their rule and their reign. Here, rulers they also offer patronage. Patronage means the support given by patron to the learned and pious. Pious means devotedly religious and tried to transform their capitals and cities into great cultural centers that brought fame to their rule and their reign. In order to get name and fame, okay, they used to do such thing. It was widely believed that the rule of a just king would be an age of plenty when the heavens would not withhold rain. So, boys, it was believed in a vast way that the rule of a just king it would be an age of plenty when the heavens would not withhold rain when the heavens do not refuse to give rain. At the same time, making precious water available by constructing tanks and reservoirs was highly praised. So, in the meantime, in the same time, what happened? Making precious water, which is available by constructing tanks and reservoirs. Reservoir means was a large artificial lake used as a source of water supply. Was highly praised. It was that reservoirs were used to praise by people. Then Sultan Iltutmish won universal respect for constructing a large reservoir just outside Delhi Aikwana. So for this matter, you see, Sultan Iltutmish, he won universal respect. It is because of he has constructed a large reservoir just outside Delhi Aikwana. It was called Hauz-i-Sultani or King's Reservoir. So boys, it was called the Hauz-i-Sultani or the King's Reservoir. Can you find it on map 1 in chapter 3? Rulers often constructed tanks and reservoirs, big and small, for use by ordinary people. Rulers, they always used to construct tanks and reservoirs, big or small, big and small. It was for use by ordinary people. Sometimes these tanks and reservoirs were part of a temple. So sometimes these reservoirs, you see boys, they were part of a temple, mosques, not the small tank in the Jami Masjid as an example you can see, or a Gurudwara. Gurudwara means it is a holy place for Sikh community where all Sikhs used to gather for worship, and to listen Guruvani. Guruvani means from their holy book of Guru Granth Sahib. They used to sit in Gurdwara in order to listen that. So here Gurdwara, a place of worship and congregation for Sikhs. Okay, it is a place of worship and congregation for Sikhs. Okay, Sikhs to the people, those people assemble for religious worship there. Okay, see in the picture that is given figure 8. You can see there. This is the golden temple of Amritsar. Okay, boys. So let's up to here for today. Thank you all.